It's 28th of September 25. I only vote on one issue, really, immigration, really. But I just wanted to point out that I don't think of myself as belonging to a party or blah blah. I don't believe in party hampers where the leadership decide what's going to happen. Maybe it's necessary, I don't know. But I think we should have an electoral system like Switzerland, sort of direct democracy, where we're voting case by case. They've just had a election in Switzerland today about two things. One was about digital ID, I think, or something like that, and the other was about some sort of canton tax for second homes or something. I don't know what it was. I think both of them failed, but they both got around about 50%. But you need to get 50% on the absolute vote, and you need to get all the cantons to agree as well. So I don't think they got it through on the cantons anyway, by the looks of it. But I'm really envious of the Swiss system, although it doesn't seem to have saved Switzerland from the way Europe's changed. Although they did put a bill through about 15, 20 years ago, where I think it was to do with minarets. Minarets weren't allowed. I don't know if it's to do with this making the noise call to prayer or whatever. And I'm not sure, but as I understand it, that's not necessary because all know when the time is for prayer. But I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, but I just maybe because things are going my way at the moment, that's made me look a bit at other things that Reform are doing because they seem to be eye-catching, in my opinion. First of all, I would say that yeah, I heard Zia Yusuf back in around about May, and I don't know whether he just returned or whether he was just about to leave, you know. But I've been very impressed in what he's been saying recently about the Boris wave and things like that. I was very impressed about illegal, so I thought, well, it's going to be strong in that, but probably not legal. And then he came up with that golden visa thing, which I'm not very keen on at all. His idea is that basically they'll give $250,000 and that'll go to low-paid workers. So it's almost like a sort of bribe to low-paid workers, really. Let this person in and they'll give you $250,000, not each. They will, the people coming in. But we've had all that, with Roman Abramovich and all that. So, and my question is, why don't these people, if they're doing really well wherever they are, why don't they want to stay where they are? Or have they considered going to other continents? Or is it just that they've done well and they only want to come to maybe 4 or 5 countries? That's all they're interested in. If so, why? So that's the sort of thing I'm saying. Why does it mean if they're doing well somewhere else that they have to be allowed to come into Britain, be British citizens, etc., or America even? Because I think if somebody's doing well in Britain, probably America's the only place that they'll really go. I mean, China, I don't think they'll want to go there, but if they did, I think only about 1,000 a year get citizenship there, and it's what 1.3 billion there. So the Chinese government have taken a policy on this, and it doesn't seem to be the same conclusion that they're coming to in the West, Yeah. So anyway, back onto this. It's about Reform UK because every Monday they seem to on YouTube either have a conference or they make some announcement and they use YouTube, X, Instagram, I guess. I watch it on YouTube usually, and they've all been really interesting. And some of them are to do with savings, and you'd think, okay, Reform UK, they're going to be right wing, they're going to be pro poachers, etc. Poachers turned gamekeepers or whatever. They're going to be ultra right in this, but actually, some of the things that I think they're coming out with, I think the left would agree with, that the far left would agree with, Or maybe I'm misreading that, but to do with quantitative easing for a start, it seems at the moment, since 2008 or something, commercial banks have been getting a great interest rate on whatever they're doing. I don't even really understand it. But Richard Tice is saying that they shouldn't be getting this interest rate. They don't get it anywhere else on quantitative easing or in. But I think he thinks quantitative easing should be stopped anyway because it was for the crash. Basically, that was really what it was for. And then another thing he's spotted is council pensions. They're badly run basically, and he thinks they could save maybe 8 billion a year. So things like this, I find them interesting, and some of them even the far left may agree with. And this is why I'm not so keen on party hampers, because there might be things all over the spectrum that I might agree with. Because if you look at the SNP Greens thing, first of all, they did a deal with Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland for the Holyrood thing there. But then the next time, I can't remember what it was. The first time I think it was it SNP had a majority anyway, but they wanted a few more just to make sure or something. But then the second term, SNP didn't have a majority and they needed the Greens. But this time they done a case by case agreement, so that makes me think, well, through experience, they feel that they don't want to do these big agreements. They just want to go by case, so they're doing it at that level. Why can't we do it, voters, at this level? I mean, one way we could do it at the moment is just every time there's a bill or something. I'm not a big fan of bills because they're big, massive changes, but say a bill, and the bill should be named after whoever really created it. Like the online bill should be really the Doris bill, Nadine Doris, so that we can identify who created this bill, really. And then for the Boris waves, I think they're classed as Priti Patel's idea. So the Patel bill, maybe, or something. I don't know. But anyway, back on to this. Yeah. List of savings. And I'm just looking at, because Reform have made these announcements. I think they're doing a fantastic job on usual social media and that, the way they're planning. It's probably Zia Yusuf that's behind most of it, I think. I'm thinking he really likes Britain, he understands why Britain's great. Maybe he doesn't, I don't know, but why people want to come to Britain, I don't know. But, he appreciates it. Probably even likes the flag, even. But the point is, when I heard him in May, he was saying something, he was talking about councils, and it was interesting what he was actually talking about. Council savings, all the waste in council, which I agree probably happens right across councils, But he said we're not slash and burn. So that really impressed me because I thought, well, this is someone who's actually looking at it in a sensible way, not like Elon Musk done with his Doge thing, even though they've called their thing Doge, which is a rubbish name. Because Elon went charging in with his friend who'd come over from India, who's done really well with some sort of thing to do with pharma that people don't seem to be sceptical about. But anyway, the friend who became multimillionaire or whatever, he never even made Trump's inauguration, as part of the Doge team. It was maybe him and Elon Musk. He never made it to the inauguration. And Musk only lasted about 4 weeks after that. So I think he was just slash and burn, just total, doesn't make sense at all. So much that even Trump wanted him out. I mean, I thought I saw some rumour that Ivanka wanted him out. It wouldn't surprise me if that's the way he get kicked out of the Trump administration. One of the main ways, if Ivanka wants you rid of you, But anyway, on to this with the reform thing. Yeah, so that impressed me about Zia Yusuf. And then I've been impressed by his ex-posts on immigration. I thought he was going to be really strict on illegal, so that would be it. But it turns out they've just made an announcement last week, which is really groundbreaking. And I think if you think open borders at 100 and 0 or reverse at 0, at the moment we've been at 90, 95 all the time, really. And the other 5%'s been loopholes where people can get back in anyway or whatever. That's the way we've been. But this thing they announced, I would say, takes us down to about 85 on that dial, maybe 80 even, with the definite right to leave. So a lot of things are going my way at the moment. And I wonder if Reform made that announcement because Advance just announced their party creation. Let's say my party now on Saturday. So I wonder if it was to spoil their party, basically. I don't know, because this seems a big shift for reform. I was looking at them for illegal, but not legal. But it seems they're going for it now. I get the feeling that Zia Yusuf's behind it. I mean, I'm not sure, but um, so I mean, this is low-hanging fruit stuff, all the same, I would say. And so, yeah, and like I say, Zia was looking at that. He's talked about councils. They're going to look at councils, etc. And they've won a few councils since then. Maybe they just won them by then or thing. So it'll be really interesting to see, because we don't want slash and burn. I don't want slash and burn. I don't want asset stripping and all this sort of stuff, which the right's known for, really. Because I mean, look at Nick Candy as one of their benefactors or whatever. I don't know, but anyway, yeah. So I was really impressed by him saying we're not slash and burn back then, and I've been impressed by his ex-posts recently as well on legal uh, immigration and stuff like that. So, and I've just made that big announcement. Then Advance have come around Saturday. Advance, I think, want zero immigration from day one of being elected until they can sort things out, until they know what's going on, basically. That's what he said. So I'm really impressed by Ben Habib as well. Ben Habib's probably the most impressive, I think, of the leaders I know of, really. And yeah, so I would be going for Advance. Like, I don't like parties, I'm not party members, but I'm impressed by Ben Habib, and on one issue, they're the best at a lot. So, because I mean, Professor David Betts reckons, well, about 4 months ago, he reckons we're going to have civil war in Britain within 5 years. You know, a lot of people know that he said civil war, but I don't think they realised that 5 years. I thought he meant 20 years or something, but he said 5 years, so that's like 4 years, 8 months now, and he's not a political type. He's a military historian expert, sort of. So he wasn't coming into it in any political sense. In fact, he wrote his paper and didn't expect anything else to happen of it. But somebody from the New Culture Forum, I think one of the young ladies, contacted him because she saw the paper, and she's interested in this sort of thing. And from that, it's become a sort of, you see him quite a lot now in YouTube videos, getting interviewed, and he's really interesting, And he's got some sort of YouTube channel he does with two other professors to talk about this, and yeah, they're very what insightful. I would think, you know. Anyway, back on to this. Yeah, they've been announcing, especially Richard Tice has been announcing things to do with government waste and all that. And when I think of the right talking about this, I think they're just talking about cuts for cuts' sake, and they're just slash and burn really. But I've been impressed by what they've been talking about. First of all, this is a list from Google Gemini. Abolish the Bank of England interest, and this is something to do. It's more that they seem to understand the system and they don't know why these things are happening. This is to do with quantitative easing, I think. Yeah, and apparently the commercial banks get some sort of special interest rate, and really Richard Tice is saying he doesn't know why, or he doesn't understand why it's still going, because this is from the 2008 crash, really. Eliminating interest payments by the Bank of England on commercial bank reserves created during quantitative easing. It's one of these things I don't think other countries do, and he reckons it will be 35 billion annually. I mean, when you think Keir Starmer was going to take away the cold winter payment, which I agreed with actually, I think it's just a sort of bribe that Tony Blair brought in, or was it Gordon Brown? That's like 2 billion a year, 2.5 billion a year. I mean, there's other ways to help poor pensioners or whatever, just rather than just giving part of their bill to a private company, the energy suppliers, that's costing about so that would have been a 2 billion saving or something. Here they're talking about saving 35 billion. It's saying annual, I don't know if it is annual, I think it might be just one off. And the other things they're talking about, end wasteful government spending, they reckon 50 billion annual. I mean, that's to do with cuts, so I don't know about that, I would need to judge that one by one, But doing away with quangos and that. Quangos were a good idea, I think, but I think they've ended up with a disaster now. A woke disaster, really. So I wouldn't be too sad to see them go, but it depends, really, I don't really know. 50 billion annual, maybe a one-off. Stop net zero funding. Well, I'm sceptical about this, 22.45 billion. I would like to hear what Dale Vince says about this. I would like to see them debate with Dale Vince. Scrapping all government spending on a net zero strategy, including subsidies for renewable energy and green initiatives. But some of these subsidies are like one-off things, I think, like because David Cameron stopped onshore wind farms in 2015. Up in Scotland, they kept going. We've got too much electricity now, and they're building a big grid, I think, to take it from Scotland down to England. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. And that'll be a one-off thing, but if it's things like that, but I think most households should be independent anyway, have their own energy. They should be virtual power plants, and I would even do away with a power plant totally. So, so I don't know about that. And then, well, they're lumping these two in together. I don't know about that. 23 billion annually. Blocking non-citizens from claiming benefits. Well, I agree with that. Ending asylum support, yes, and overhauling the welfare system. Well, I'd need to see what they mean by it, including stop illegal. Yes, of course, yes. So these are billions. We're talking about billions. Like, local government pension reform. Yeah, this is an interesting one. This is one that perked my interest because it looks pretty straightforward. Overhauling the local government's pension scheme by improving investment performance and reducing management fee. And it seems at the moment, really, it's just something that they do. They don't use tracker indexes. They use private management. Richard Tice says they're paying more fees for that, and they're not performing well even, or they're just performing the same as a tracker or whatever. So it wouldn't surprise me if there are a lot of loss there in council. I'm all in favour of looking at councils and public sector, well, if you want to call it waste, I don't know. But I'm sure there's savings you can make that don't really affect anyone, because this wouldn't really affect anyone. If if the if the funds are performing just as well for cheaper, or they're performing better. So, and then the last one, abolish foreign aid. I don't know about this actually because I want to help countries around the world, cutting the international aid budget entirely. I didn't know they were doing that. Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know, but I mean, I would like to help the people that are coming to Britain, and I would like to think, how can we help these countries in a way that isn't us just giving them money that's getting wasted or whatever. So, yeah, I'm just looking at this because people are saying that it's not credible what they're talking about. Um, Reform has confirmed that EU citizens with settled status would be exempt from their proposed benefit changes. I don't know if that means indefinite right to leave. Although the people who are on that at the moment, I think it's going to be changed into a work visa for every 5 years, and you've got to renew it. And I think they're going to be on that as well. So that should catch the Boris wave, because next January is when the Boris wave first year get indefinite right to leave, which basically means that you're almost certainly going to get citizenship in maybe 5 years' time. But it gives you access to benefits and stuff. You can bring your family over probably or something, I don't know. They claimed 35 billion saving from Bank of England interest on reserves is a one-off saving, not an annual one. Okay, fair enough, but it's still quite a lot, 35 billion. I don't want to go down too far there because there's a YouTube video at the bottom. Yeah. So looking at these massive savings, and when you think of what even Keir Starmer's welfare thing was like 8 billion a year that was going to save, and he was upsetting his own side basically. I don't think anyone likes Keir. It's a Labour conference today, and I don't think anyone, even his MPs, like him. Rosie Duffield was talking about that today. I mean, she left last year. She said she just couldn't bear being in Keir's been part of Keir's government, or I mean, by saying that, what I mean is, well, I'm paraphrasing, basically. She said she would come back, but not with Keir's now. There's, and she said a good point, and I've said that as well. There's no stammer rights. If you're not getting any stammer right, if you're not getting any fans, then what's going on? So I'm just going to look a bit more at this. Yeah, keep in mind I don't know what I'm talking about. This quantitative easing thing anyway. Reform UK is taking a strong stance against quantitative easing and its ongoing reversal, known as quantitative tightening. Their position can be summarised. Opposition to QE and desire to prohibit it. Or they want to prohibit it. What else are they want to stop the interest payments on bank reserves. Slowing, halting, quantitative tightening. In essence, Reform's UK's policy is to radically change the framework around QE, primarily by stopping the significant costs they argue are being unfairly transferred to the public purse. So this is quite surprising to me, because I would have thought Reform would always be on the side of the private sector, in this case the commercial banks, which are probably making a fortune from the taxpayer for no real reason, really. So I'll start off with the end one. Slowing, halting, quantitative tightening. Reform UK has also called for the Bank of England to halt or significantly slow down its bond sales. They point out that the bank is selling these bonds at a loss, which is then borne by the Treasury, effectively deepening the financial burden on taxpayers. Stopping interest payments on bank reserves. A core proposal is for the Bank of England to stop paying interest on the vast reserves created for commercial banks during the quantitative easing process. Reform UK, particularly Richard Tice, argues that this payment represents a massive and unwarranted transfer of wealth from the taxpayer to private banks, costing the Treasury tens of billions of pounds a year. They have been pressing the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey on this issue. Yeah, they met him last week. But the point about this is, why aren't the far left going on about this? Maybe they are, but it's not really something that I've heard them. Opposition to QE and desire to prohibit it. Reform UK generally views QE as a form of currency debasement that drives inflation and disproportionately benefits the wealthy. So there you go. I'm surprised at that from Reform. An MP from the party introduced a prohibition bill in Parliament which sought to make QE illegal without excess parliamentary approval and prohibit the government from indemnifying losses from it. Then shouldn't the left applaud this, why the left might applaud the key Reform UK proposal that aligns with progressive concerns is the call to stop the Bank of England paying interest on commercial bank reserves. So, Jeremy Corbyn should be going on about this. Maybe he does, I don't know. Targeting unearned bank profit. Progressive and left-wing economists have long criticised this practice, arguing it amounts to a massive subsidy or free lunch for the banking sector. See, this is the kind of thing that goes on. People talk about welfare, where actually the people at the bottom of the pile, even if they're, I don't know, some people you could be talking 100,000, 200,000, but we're talking about billions probably, and it's all, quote, legal. Arguing amounts to a massive subsidy or free lunch for the banking sector. Since interest rates have risen, this mechanism is costing the taxpayers tens of billions of pounds a year, funneled directly to banks. And it's ironic because Nigel Farage, it's only about 2 years ago, Coots said they were closing his account they didn't say for political reasons, but that's what it really was, It's a funny old world, really, isn't it? Fiscal savings. The left-leaning New Economics Foundation, for example, has also proposed a similar measure to save the government billions that could be spent on public services. This is another reason. Anti-establishment populism. QE itself is criticised by some on the left for exacerbating wealth inequality by inflating asset prices, like property, benefiting the already wealthy, while the costs are now being borne by the public. Reform UK's attack on unnecessary payments to city institutions resonates with the economic populist sentiment that exists in both the left and right, and why the left is hesitant or opposed to coming in with Reform UK on this, I would guess. Monetary policy, risk and independence. The mainstream Labour Party and many economists view the current system as crucial for the Bank of England's paying interest on reserves. Monetary policy, transmission mechanism and its operational independence. Stopping these payments could be seen as political interference that destabilises the financial system, risks the bank's credibility and causes interest rates to collapse, which is not what is wanted when inflation is a concern. The magic money tree context. Reform UK claims the billions saved could fund its own wide-ranging tax cuts. So Reform would use it to give tax cuts, they're saying, whereas I'm not sure that would be true totally now. Reform are looking a bit different. I mean, they've already talked about doing away with the child cap benefit, I think. Some other things, mainly to help families, I would have thought. I don't know. But the left generally opposes these large uncaused tax cuts. So, the source of the proposal, well, of course, because it's reform, the left don't want to be seen with that, so. But that's a bit pathetic in a way, although they can just talk about it themselves. I've not really seen them talk about this myself, personally. Alternative solution. Progressive thinkers often propose a more nuanced approach, such as a tiered reserve system, where only some reserves earn interest, or a special windfall tax on the bank's QE profits, which avoids the political and technical risks of unilaterally stopping all interest payments. In summary, well, the core idea of stopping a subsidy to commercial banks is economically popular with many progressives. The political source and the potential economic fallout make it impossible for the established left to officially support Reform UK's specific proposal. Okay, well, they might in the future, I don't know. Yeah, and I was just asking what other big saving programs, because I've heard quite a few. I mean, I don't understand them all, but they're sort of eye-catching to me in that they're targeting things, and it sort of makes sense when I hear it. I've not heard the argument against or whatever. So stopping interest on QE reserves, immigration and welfare reform, yeah. Well, they're talking about saving 42 billion a year, but these are two different things, really, in a way. Although a lot of immigration, I think, end up claiming benefits. I think it's serious have sense of it. 1 in 6 are on universal credit at the moment, or 1 in 6 of universal credit is to foreign born, and that's before the Boris wave. People have got indefinite right to leave, so they've not got the right to claim benefits yet, but in January they will. Some of them, the first batch, the 2021 batch. Banning non-UK citizens from claiming benefits, so I'm in favour of that. So is that all? And that's going to come from that? I don't know. Anyway, cutting foreign aid, I don't know about that. I would need to know more. General cost cutting programs, yeah, I agree with that. As long as it's not slash and burn, as long as it makes sense. I've no doubt there's a lot of waste in the public sector. Just the way things happen, or I mean, even if you look at it this way, if a psychiatrist is getting £100,000 a year and they're not very good at their job and they should be sacked, they would get about, say, 10,000 a year on job seekers allowance, so that would be like a £90,000 saving from the taxpayer, that sort of thing. But I'm giving an extreme thingy. But there's lots of waste. I've known people, and I remember one old lady, I don't like to tell that story actually. It was just, she used to get something delivered, but then she moved away. I don't know if she moved into a care home or whatever, but the thing still kept getting delivered, and it was like, I reckon it was probably worth about £30-40, and it got delivered about 4 times or something after she'd left. That's just total waste. And then, anyway, general cost cutting programs. Slash government waste, yeah. Saving claimed 50 billion a year. So they're talking about 5%, but it depends. But they're going to do away with a lot of quangos, which is probably needed because quangos were a good idea. It was maybe wise panels, but I think they've just ended up as woke panels that are out of control, basically. Um, yeah, so I want to skip this YouTube video. So, yeah, the council pensions thing, this is what I want to ask about it because this caught my eye recently. This is what really took my interest. Recently focused on the local government pension scheme. So, they are not proposing to cut pension payments to existing retirees, but are targeting the management of the funds and the future terms for new recruits. They reckon they could save 8 to 11 billion annually. Method. Firm claims that they've got negligent management, underperformance, and egregious fees paid to external fund manager. Their policy is to force the LGPS to shift assets into low-cost passive index trackers instead of high-fee active and illiquid private investments. Attack what they call woke funds or investments based on net zero or environmental, social and governance mandates, which they claim lead to underperformance. Use the estimated savings on investment fees and improved returns to reduce the contribution burden on local councils, thereby freeing up money for priorities like social care or tax cuts. Okay, so they're talking about 8 to 11 billion a year, they're saying there. In councils where Reform UK has gained power, the party has also reportedly proposed pensions for new staff. So this is what they want to do for the new staff, preventing new council staff from joining the LGPS, instead forcing them onto less generous defined contribution schemes. Well, I probably agree with that, really. Probably alternate pay rises for existing staff, offering lower pay rises to existing staff to cover the higher cost to the council of funding their existing defined benefit final salary pensions. Yeah, this is to do with final salary pensions and that. Yeah, that's probably needs a look at. Industry and union response. So this is the left. Heavily disputed by the pensions industry and unions. Well, the pensions industry is on the left. Industry view. Organisations like Pensions UK argue that LGPS is one of the world's most successful schemes, currently over 100% funded with strong aggregate returns, e.g. 8.9% in 2024. They state that the claims of massive waste are inaccurate and the savings figures are plucked out of the air. Union view. Unions like Unison have strongly opposed the proposals, calling it an assault on the pension of firefighters and council workers. They argue that forcing new staff onto inferior pensions would exacerbate the recruitment and retention crisis in local government. Well, I wouldn't really pay attention to the unions actually after the way they've behaved over 50, 60 years, so I would take that with a pinch of salt anyway. Yeah, I thought of the Motability scheme, I thought they were going to do something about that, but I don't think they've said anything at the moment so far on it. Yeah, there's some sort of taxi scheme that councils use to take residents about. But it's not noticed. I think they mentioned it the other day in the thing where they're going to have to look at this. They're using their Department of Government Efficiency, unfortunate name really, considering what happened to Musk's Doge over in America. Cancel non-essential spending. I don't know. Target bloated budgets. School and sense. Yeah, this is the thing I think. Reform-led councils such as Kent County Council have stated that school transport is an area being reviewed for potential savings, as it represents a significant portion of the budget. Any service subsidy, including resident taxi or transport schemes, would be a target of cuts if deemed inefficient or non-essential. Yeah, that was the thing I was looking at. And that's all I've got to say about that, really. I'll go back to that table. Yeah, just looking, if they're right, it's incredible. But I'm viewing them not as a right-wing party, really. I'm viewing them as a case-by-case basis, listening to what they've got to say. And Nigel Farage says a lot about the things he says, let's have a debate. And that's the problem. I think a lot of time we don't have a debate. We just end up with a bill. They say that they've talked to people, but it's probably woke charities and stuff, just small interest groups. Whereas if you can have a debate with the public, because Ben Habib said this as well, Advance UK are going to be very transparent. They're not going to just suddenly come up with bills, I think they're going to let you know how they're thinking. What do you think? That sort of thing. So, and that's the way it should be, really. Because a lot of the times these parties are secretive, and they think that knowing that there's disagreements means that it looks bad to the public or whatever. I don't think that's the case, I really want to know what's going on, really. And also, I think the public are taking far more interest, which they don't like. Well, a lot of them don't like because they're used to just vote us in every 5 years and then just let us get on with it. But people don't like that anymore because they're taking an interest. They've got social media. They've got their own opinions. They're following people on YouTube, etc. So we've got the voting, not voting, petition thing for the government policies. That's embarrassing them a lot. And we've got Restore UK doing freedom of information questions. They're doing their own surveys. They're commissioning their own surveys, etc. So everything's changed. I mean, like I say, I think the electoral system is not fit for purpose. It should be like the Swiss system if you're going to pick any. Maybe even go further than that to direct democracy. Alright, that's all I've got to say. Yeah, but it's comical to see Keir Starmer, just coming out with these cuts all of a sudden. I mean, her Liz Kendall, who was in charge of all the cuts for welfare, and now she's been moved from the. I don't know what she is now. Last year she was meant to be the queen of welfare cuts, and now she's not even the minister for it anymore. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's all I've got to say for just now. Do your own research.